Hey, this is Father Steve, Episcopal Priest, serving here in the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland. Um, Again, I serve two Episcopal congregations, St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Clear Spring, Maryland, and St. Thomas's Episcopal Parish in Hancock, Maryland. Both these Episcopal churches are in the western part of Washington County. We are doing the study of the book of Revelation. This recording is for Revelation chapter 8. And again, one of the resources besides the Bible, N.T. Wright, For Everyone, Bible Study Guides, Revelation, 22 studies for individuals and groups, written by N.T. Wright. This is one of the main sources of our discussion for in-house and for recording of the study of Revelation. So we're going to take a look at chapter 8, and those who've been following us will notice a different backdrop. Well, moving into the fall season and Christmas season, I thought, well, we get out of the basement of Canterbury and put something up. I put a little fall decoration up here on the table between me and that empty seat there. We use the same recording studio for That Day May Be One with Father Bobby Shives in Trinity Episcopal Church in Martinsburg, West Virginia, the Episcopal Diocese of West Virginia. We'll be recording here shortly. Our schedules have been very tight. He was traveling with his wife Kim over in Scotland and other people back in September. And then Trinity Martinsburg just finished hosting the Episcopal Diocese of West Virginia convention. So he's been very busy, but we will have that seat occupied very shortly. And we'll kind of keep that empty seat there as a reminder for Father Bobby, if you're watching this, that you need to get back here in this seat. So anyway, we're going to look at chapter 8 of the book of Revelation, a few of my notes that I have here. If you allow me to go over some of my notes. The seventh seal is finally broken. The will of God is revealed. 7 angels with 7 trumpets, angels of the presence, because they are in the immediate presence of God. And we see that in Luke chapter 1, verse 19. The altar, the heavenly temple, seems to have only one altar. This corresponds to the altar of Holocaust and to the altar of incense in the Jerusalem temple, Exodus 31. We see that. Remember from Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 8, all Christians on earth are marked with the divine seal. As I've mentioned in our confirmation class and in other adult forums, incense is used for visible representation of prayers ascending. One of these examples are in verse 4 of chapter 8. Fire of the altar, verse 5, symbol of God's wrath to be made on earth, Ezekiel 10:2 and Genesis 19:24, where we see that. And the first 4 trumpets, these are described in a parallel manner. Descriptions are brief and contain similar expressions. Now here's something interesting that we'll see in chapter 8, wormwood, verses 10 through 11. A very bitter drink. This drink became known as the Green Fairy. One of the ingredients from wormwood is absinthe. As to whether it is a myth or true, stories say that one of the things that led up to Vincent van Gogh cutting off part or most of his left ear was that he consumed absinthe, which led further to his mental illness and depression. The Green Fairy became a national drink in France in later 19th century. The Green Fairy was fashionable among the artistic community and became a cheap drink of choice among the poor. And it's said that Edgar Allan Poe relied upon drinking the Green Fairy, the absinthe-laced drink. So there you go, a little bit about wormwood. So we'll go into chapter 8. Encourage you at this moment to go ahead and read chapter 8 of the book of Revelation. And then we will get into our study guide and the study questions. Okay? So I'll give you a moment there. You can pause this and go ahead and read chapter 8. Okay, welcome back. So a little on board here from N.T. Wright's book. Bernard Levin was one of the greatest London journalists of the last generation. One of his many great loves was music. Levin relished the great moments of classical music, the operas of Mozart and Wagner in particular. He was no stranger to thunderous applause, standing ovations, the celebration of a delighted audience after a majestic performance. But on one occasion, at the end of the recital of Schubert, songs by one of the finest singers of the day, he described how the audience simply was sat in silence, and then, still in silence, got up slowly and left the concert hall. The spell of music had been so powerful that nobody dared to break it with anything so mundane as clapping. Such moments are precious and rare and remind us in our noisy, soaked world that silence can be not simply the absence of noise, a temporary and an unwelcome piece of boredom, but a profound, still, deep experience which one can sense aspects of reality which are normally drowned out by chatter and babble. That is the spirit in which we should hear what John has to say, that when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven, lasting about a half an hour. A sense of awe, expectation, and anticipation. The otherwise ceaseless praise of the four living creatures dies away. The song of the elders, the angels, and the huge, countless crowd falls quiet. Everyone seems to be holding their breath. This, we sense, is the moment they've all been waiting for. We watch hardly daring to breathe ourselves. So, kind of an icebreaker question for you. Have you ever experienced a silence that seems too meaningful to break? What made it so significant? One of the things, I'll kind of put this out there for you, is when I've opened up the church, just recently, several weeks ago, St. Andrew's was a World Day of Prayer for the things that's going on in Israel and in the Gaza Strip. It was a World Day of Prayer, and I actually opened up St. Andrew's and St. Thomas's. And people came back to me. I ran into people after that, and they said, thank you so much, because being in the church in silence, yes, we can be in silence out in nature, but to be inside the church in silence was so meaningful that day, and they thanked me for having the churches open. So there is just something to be said about being in silence a little bit, and actually going into the house of God and being silent and just sitting there. A few years ago, I used to keep St. Andrew's open every Friday for folks to come in at the end of the week and to pray and just be there in silence. It would be open up at 6:30 in the morning and go until about 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, then lock the church back up. Well, as things go, people stopped taking advantage of that day, and I kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to open up the church early and spend all day and then going back and closing it up. But I'm going to get back to that Fridays of opening the churches up. I think it's very important, especially after I ran into somebody in the community about being able to come in and be in silence and be in the presence of the Lord inside the church. So, first question, other than our icebreaker, deals with verses 1 through 5 of chapter 8. What mood and feeling is created by these opening verses of chapter 8? What mood and feeling is created by these opening verses of chapter 8? Okay. So moving on. Throughout chapter 6, going back to chapter 6, we watch perhaps in dismay as the Lamb removed the seals from the scroll which had been handed to him by the figure seated on the throne. The four horsemen, then the souls under the altar, then the terror seizing earth's inhabitants. Then there was a pause in chapter 7, with God's faithful people being sealed so that the great damage that was bound to be done upon earth when God's judgment came sweeping through would not harm them. Remember the mark. How does the pause of chapter 7, as we wait for the seventh seal finally to be opened in chapter 8, heighten the drama and add emphasis here? So how is the pause in chapter 7, and now we're in chapter 8, waiting for the seventh seal finally open in chapter 8, heighten that drama and add emphasis? Okay? Okay, another question. Trumpets were used in various purposes in ancient Judaism, sometimes in worship, especially at certain festivals, and not unnaturally in battle. One of the most celebrated of the later occasions was when Israelites circled Jericho, and the blast of their trumpets, the walls fell down flat, and we see that in Joshua 6. More generally, trumpets were blown for warning to sound the alarm. What role do you think the trumpets will play in this vision? What role do you think the trumpets will play in this vision? Now we're going to move on to verses 3 through 5. What is the role of the angel with the censer? What is the role of the angel with the censer? And that's verses 3 through 5. Okay. Now, for those of us who love incense, here's a good question. We have already heard in Revelation 5:8, going back to chapter 5:8, that the prayers of God's people on earth are presented before God like incense. We hear that in the morning office of morning prayer. Now the angel approaches once more, and this time he's given a large quantity of incense. But there's a bunch of coughing there. Now, repeat that. Now the angel approaches once more, and this time is given a large quantity of incense. In some Jewish thinking, the praises of heaven must pause for a while so that the prayers of earth may be given a proper hearing. How does this picture of the prayers of the saints being offered up before the throne at this crucial moment, challenge the way we think about prayer? You know, going back to that question about the pause, and this kind of brings back a memory, is that in our liturgy, you know, historically, I know that other churches, Episcopal churches I've served, there is a tradition that's held that when you come into church, you kneel, you pray, you're silent, you prepare your mind and your heart in prayer and silence to begin worship. Those know I'm not going to single out which church it is, but there's one in Command. There's a lot of chatter. I'm not saying to stop this, but there's a lot of chatter. They're so happy to be there. You know, some haven't seen each other for the week, and yeah, there'll be hospitality later, but they chatter. I have not said, listen, sit down, be quiet. I'm not going to stop it. Some of you watching say, I should stop it, but I'm not going to stop it. But there is something to be said about coming in and sitting down, praying, and just the silence. There is something to be said about that. Okay? So moving on, looking through verses 6 through 9. What do the first two trumpets bring? And this is chapter 8, verses 6 through 9. What do the first two trumpets bring? There's some more questions here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. And this is something, you know, especially what you know, that's trying to not date these recordings, but there's a lot going on in the world right now with this next question. So, you know, this is 2023. You know, you could look at this in 2025 or whatever. I'm not going to try to date this video, but there's a lot of things that have happened in the world, particularly right now in November 2023. But I want to throw this question out to you in the discussion. Even after a century of war, terror, and high-tech genocide, we are still inclined, in the Western world at least, to pretend to ourselves that the world has really become quite a pleasant place, with evil merely a blip on the horizon, which we can deal with easily enough. However great the contrary evidence, this modern myth of the eradication of evil through enlightenment, leaving only a few minor mopping up operations, preferably in faraway places, before utopia finally arrives, has taken hold on popular imagination. How does Revelation 8 underscore the seriousness of evil in our world? How does Revelation 8 underscore the seriousness of evil in our world? Should get a good discussion out of this. One more question before I just do a note on what we've just read. There's nothing wrong I mean, this is from the book. There's nothing wrong with being an earth dweller, but the point John is making again and again is that there are many who have lived on earth as though there were no heaven, or as though if heaven there be, it was irrelevant. In what ways do we still see the tendency to think this way in our own day? Think that there's no heaven. It could be the way we live, how we are so in tune with possessions, earthly possessions. So we good on chapter 8? So that's chapter 8 of the study of the book of Revelation. And I hope that that helps. Again, Father Steve, Episcopal Priest servant here in the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland. New backdrop. Want to be a little bit more fall. I have a little fall decoration that I borrowed from upstairs where of this recording studio, which is actually my office at St. Thomas's Episcopal Parish in Hancock. So I kind of borrowed this, and we'll try to probably get like a Christmas wreath or something to hang here. But anyway, this is I'm not green screen, by the way. This is actual backdrop, and so I thought I'd just switch it up a little bit. And so we just did Revelation Bible Study, chapter 8, and you have a good one until the next time. God bless.